Welcome back to Mastering Change.
Today's guest brings energy, literally. We're joined by Poppy Delbridge, coach, author, and pioneer of something called rapid tapping.
If you've ever felt stuck emotionally, creatively, physically, Poppy offers a fast, intuitive way to shift what's going on inside and clear what's been holding you back.
She talks to us about what it means to unlock trauma through the body, how energy moves through generations, and why healing doesn't have to be heavy to be profound.
I'm really pleased to share that Poppy will be joining us live at Transform Trauma Oxford this September, so consider this your preview.
Let's dive in.
Poppy Delbridge, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Minta.
Hi, Poppy. As most of our listeners now probably already know, we start each of these podcasts with a little game of cards. Well, I've selected a few cards here, and on each of these cards is a prompt. The idea being, Poppy, that you will answer the prompt with this little story, which will help you connect to myself and Emma and also our audience. So the prompt says, or the card says, something I grew up thinking was normal, but later found out wasn't, ...
Right, so many things. The first one that comes to mind from that is I believed that anything was possible. And I know that sounds naff, but really I did. And later I found out that, leaving Cornwall, which is where I grew up in a really sort of small town there, I realised, hang on a minute, belief systems are not the same for everyone. And a lot of us have to rewire them. Now, I suppose if you looked at it on paper, my childhood, if I was growing up, and that's your question, isn't it, was quite odd. And it was probably full of trauma. But I didn't really feel like it was. So when I was 3, my dad had a heart attack. And they found out that it was adrenal cancer, stage 4 adrenal cancer. It was his late 20s. And I very quickly realised that your belief had a real say in your realities. And my dad and my mum believed that actually he wouldn't die as they expected him to in 10 days. And instead, what I grew up believing was that your well-being and your mindset and your energy was just a normal thing that would help you to not only feel good, which is, of course, now that is what it's for, but I believed that you could really heal the body with that when there was no other care or allopathic medicine available, which there wasn't for him. So what happened was he got better. So he was running marathons, doing all sorts of things, and really healthy and really happy. And even though actually my family lost everything, it's very hard to sort of, it took a while to get better, and he did 20 years. That's what I believed. So I believed that I could sort of leave that little town as a sort of nobody, I guess, and sort of go and have this life, which I ended up doing in a career in television, and get all these things happen, and sort of move through trauma, but in a different way, where I used my imagination and possibility and lots of these sort of, I suppose, alternative practices that were just completely normal to me. Like, why are people not doing these alternative practices, like having loads of supplements when they're young? Now they're cool, but they certainly weren't then. So that was really my belief. And I suppose it's such a pertinent prompt from Perel there, that you kind of think, yeah, I think that led me into what I do now.
I'm fascinated by that story. How did your parents know what to do or where to start? What was the inspiration for them, in that moment, deciding their path was going to be different? And, I've got so many questions as you were talking there, but I'm particularly interested in that catalyst for, no, our path's going to be different to the one that's just been served to us.
Mm. My mum was the force behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a decision that it was not going to be that. And so I guess what happened was they fell into it, really, and they started exploring. You know, then my dad kind of got on board with it. It's interesting, I suppose. I talk a lot about placebo and nocebo and, authority figures and what they tell you. The intention of that actually, I think, is really important. And my parents decided that it was possible. And they used a lot of mindset techniques, visualization, lots of nutrition, body work as well. My dad became a vegetarian. He did daily exercise. Um, they had a belief that it was possible, and they had a purpose that they wanted to live. I noticed that, and I think that kind of it was it was a catastrophe for them, but they just had to do it. But I saw them sort of rise through it. Yeah.
And it's such an empowering message, really, is that I still think there's so much. I'm really interested at the intersection of trauma and integrative medicine, but also integrative medicine in general, because I still think there's so much of the principles of that kind of root cause analysis and understand the principle, what it is to live well and what we need physiologically, biologically, from a community perspective. That it sounds like your parents were pioneers and trailblazers ahead of their time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But did you say your dad lived for another 20 years after that first diagnosis?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much, which is really cool. And I guess, I went through then my own traumas, which then led me into this work with this sense of courage. And one of those things actually that my mum really got me into was this sort of concept of sort of the breath and tapping, using the body and the nervous system, but also belief to open up possibilities using your imagination. Yeah,
It was your mum. So your mum got you involved in tapping.
she did.
That's a great point, I think, to segue as to how do you relate to this field. But if we could just before we go there, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself in your own words, that this will be used when we put the podcast out to the audience.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Poppy Delbridge, and I'm known as an expert best-selling author in tapping. My real passion is about helping other people kind of quantum leap into a realm of possibility where things open up for them in their life by really sort of coming back to themselves using nervous system health techniques. And I created something called rapid tapping, which is a way of really doing that every day, like a hygiene for ourselves, as normal as eating and drinking would be my desire for us as human beings.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering if it might be appropriate for you to walk us through a really small exercise before we get into that conversation about how you relate to the field, just so that our audience, anyone who's not familiar with the concept, can quickly, it can serve two purposes. One, to explain what tapping is, and two, maybe to get us in a favorable state for receiving what you're going to share today.
Yes, I'm up for it. So would you like to start with just a bit of, just a quick little bit of rapid tapping, seeing as that's
Yeah.
a state of being thing? Yeah. So, and then I can sort of go into the history of it and sort of all of that. So if we begin just by noticing just our breath, and one of the ways that we do this is just notice what I call frequency, which is really just a collection of, your thoughts and feelings, everything that's going on. And that, as we know, is both in the mind, but also in the body. So if we put our hands one on top of the other over our heart center, and we just take a deep breath in through the nose and let that go through the mouth. Just notice that. And then, maybe giving yourself a score, from the top of that scale, if you like, an imaginary scale is like +10. You're feeling super bliss, super joy. And then down to 0, feeling just a bit like maybe I'm just a bit disconnected today. It's okay. And then moving down into the below the line, which would feel a bit down in the -10s if you really don't even want to get out of bed. Just notice where you are. And you just start there. Take a guess, notice the emotion that feels most strong right now. And then take another deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. We just kind of intend that score is going up or has gone up, and it's already done that we've experienced within our body that kind of higher frequency at some point. And if not, we can just imagine it. So then what we can do is just work with our nervous system a little, and where our hands are, you just push. And you can just push into what we call the sore spots. So you almost find them a little sore, a little tender. You just push there, massage them. You might want to just do another breath here and let it go. Anything from the day so far. And then we say a few things together. I think of these like the 3 A's. The first one is just acknowledging with honesty what we feel. The second one is just to accept that is the case. And then we can affirm a new possibility, a new state of being. So 3 A's. So we'll say, maybe there's a bit of tension in the mind or tension in the body or stress. Usually there is. We're human beings. So let's say it. I feel some tension.
I feel some tension.
I feel some tension in my mind and thoughts. And I feel maybe some tension in the body too. Because I am a human being. But it is possible for me to feel safe in my body. Right now. And then we could just do maybe a little tap. So you'll take those 2 hands and then we'll move up into between the eyebrows. And you can just now, because I know a lot of people wouldn't know what this is, we'll just tap without too many words. So in between the eyebrows, tapping both hands. And then in a continuous motion, just moving around so you get to the sides of the eyes. And take a deep breath in here. Let it out. Through the mouth, a bit of a sigh. Going under the eyes, we'll flutter here. And we'll just move backwards and forwards. Good. And then under the nose. Maybe considering at this point what you'd like to feel like. Maybe it's energized, calm, clear. And then moving to the chin. Lifting up our head slightly. Putting our tongue to the roof of the mouth. And then tapping all the way down the neck. Sides of the neck until you get to the heart and the collarbones. So 2 circles here. You should be feeling just a little bit lighter, a bit more present and grounded now. And then we'll just do a quick head hug. My favorite thing, which is rubbing your hands together, taking a smile, releasing a few happier hormones and just kind of maybe lifting up the hands, just feeling like, yeah, okay, good. taking that smile a bit more. And then in a moment, I'll just 3, 2, 1 you down, like a countdown. And then you can keep ever so still and put one hand on your forehead, one hand on the back of your head, and just hold. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, and hold. Just take a breath here. Maybe you want to close your eyes, maybe not. Either way is good. And you can just hold that different feeling, maybe a little tingling. Let it go through your body, through the cells till it gets to the bottom of your feet. Good. Just imagining all that energy shifted, a bit more alert, a bit more ready. And then open up your eyes and then shake out your hands. Yay. And then you can probably do a little check-in and just put your hands back on your heart center and just notice, has your score gone up?
I love that. I love the head hug always, and the fizziness that you feel afterwards. It's funny. I shouldn't say it's funny. I feel better every time I do your rapid tapping. I really do every time. So much better. Just definitely more energized for sure.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Me too. This is why it's quite good. Just constantly thinking when you meet, and then you're like, oh, great.
Feel great though.
Popped up. Yeah.
And I don't know if I told you, but I'm starting to read your book, Poppy, with my son in the evening. So I just think it's a really good thing to do with a kid at night. Yeah, and I'm hoping that he'll start to kind of get it a bit like your dad did with you, right? When you were younger, like teaching you that the infinite possibilities and the fact that you can, this kind of can do. I'm hoping that will I can give that to my son too. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. Yay.
Great, thank you. So if you could now, that's a great place, I think, for us to go into the conversation about how do you relate to the field. I mean, I think we've had a sense of that from the conversation around your childhood and your early influences, but what is it that you want to, with your book, with your work, what are you trying to get out there? What are you trying to make sure people know, understand, practice?
Wow. I mean, possibility is probably the word I always come back to. And I think that in terms of the field, I feel like my place in that is to develop and discover more about how possibility and potential is something that's like intrinsically linked with the nervous system, health, regulation of that, and also imagination and beliefs, and how we as humans could often look at something that's already being done and then look at the way that would feel within us. So most of my time is actually spent with people creating what they want, their heart desires, goals, their leaders or brands or whatever, everyday people on rapid tapping. And what I have found is that there's a big omission of the feeling state and how we can actually start to predict that within the body to create really exciting things, maybe quicker than we are told that we can. And, I think Bessel, was one of the first people that really got me into this. In fact, my mum gave me Bessel's book as well, hilariously, many, many moons ago. And I remember coming to Masters actually last year, and, he talked about this. He talked about possibility and imagination. I was like, yes. And, what he started was this idea that I think he said everything that everyone tells you is a cover story. So you're not really just looking always at the mind and talking yourself out or into something. We really want to go into the nervous system. We really want to go into the body. We really want to feel safety within the body. So to create any goal for me, I go straight to, do you feel safe in the body? Not calm, safe, different. And you can feel really excited and still feel safe in the body. But often we're only told that one thing about get very calm, get very quiet. No, I can be dancing on tables, meeting all my desires if I want to. That can actually, I think, catapult certainly my people that I work with into a different frequency. So when you shift your energy and you shift your frequency and you really go for it, it has this incredible effect where things open up, things feel possible. But also your nervous system is kind of got to be ready to receive that as well. Because we've got to start there. Yeah, so that's why I'm pretty obsessed with that, I suppose.
And what you say about Bessel, I mean, I remember him talking. I remember going to a presentation of his around the imagination, and it's like with a trauma survivor, often they are so stuck in their nervous system, they're never either with their nervous system issues or just stuck in this idea that nothing will ever change, and it will always be this kind of terrible moment of terror. And both, that's the same with like kind of when people have flashbacks, it's what's got stuck in their body, it hasn't been able to be expelled or removed, is this kind of stuck trauma. And I think the work that you do can help people kind of move through and overcome that kind of stuckness, so they are able to imagine a future which they couldn't before, imagine a possibility of a future. And I think that's so important for trauma survivors, because as far as I'm aware, talking about it isn't able to kind of get them through that, be able to get them out of that stuck place.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started working predominantly with tapping, it was because I was working with people on, more traditional disciplines, of coaching or of NLP. And what I found was, it was just exactly like you say. There's stuckness in the body to get through first. There was an honesty needed to acknowledge what was there, but then to very quickly go, okay, I'm just not going to give that all my energy, because we know that energy counts, and what we dwell in actually can repeat and regurgitate. So, in terms of the neuroscience of that, we really need to give ourselves helpful information. And if that helpful information could be a little bit more focused on affirming what could be possible, what will that do? What will that do for us?
And do you, when you meet people, is there a general acceptance and readiness to kind of, what's that transitionary? How do you meet people, and what's the catalyst to getting them moving on this trajectory? Because of all the work we've seen of yours, it's really clear that you have people, once you've got people over that threshold and into a regular practice, there's great adoption and great shift and transition, and this ability to move through things through a physical practice exists. But what's the sort of tipping point or the shift from, where's the light bulb moment, I guess?
Yeah, I tend to attract people who would like just a bit more self-discovery and clarity to then make a decision that something can be done for them. And what I'll tend to do is not rush too much into the goal itself and the action. We spend way too much time doing, just pelting right into action, especially the people I often work with, quite busy people. We're used to going through education and going, okay, bang, what can I do to make this happen, right? That is unfortunate, because that's the burnout phase, because you kind of like, you spend so much of our time strategizing, overthinking, the beliefs then can feel like, I call them gremlins. They hold you back. Most people come to me with those gremlins who are like, why can't I know exactly what I want, and how do I then get it? And that isn't a material thing. It often is. But, I sometimes think that's just the way into the feeling state. So I don't mind it. Someone comes to me saying, like, I want a success, I want a house, I want a partner, I want money. I don't tell them to get lost. I say, cool, what's behind that? You don't want it. You want the feeling. So let's focus on the feeling. But it's a good way in. So most people, I will say, don't start too quick on the visioning and getting really specific with what you need to do, just think about the fact, and the light bulb often goes up when we think, well, hey, what about two things? One, you look at your safety in the body, so your nervous system, which is essentially usually fight or flight, freeze, chronic, what we're like these days. I mean, I went through it myself, burnout 2010, got hovering on this high performance need, which can be limited. And then the second thing that often I think, okay, if we've looked at that, the second thing then is beliefs, rearranging those, working with those, using tapping for those, and just understanding that, that they're there and that they don't have to be there forever. What would be a new belief that you might need if you had your desire already done? And that often can be quite a big tipping point for people, to know that there's two stages of something being done. One is like, decide it's done. And decide that in your imagination and your identity and your personality. And then second, then it's done in real life. So I don't talk about, I suppose, action so much until a lot of that stuff is looked at, because that speeds things up.
And so does that, you said that getting behind the kind of wants, that helps you bridge into these kind of beliefs, these self-limiting beliefs. That's how you start to identify them and then work with them then. So it's behind the job, the car, the relationship, the lifestyle, the aspiration that, everybody's kind of, that's what they label their wants or their needs as. And you're going below that to sort of say, okay, well, what's that feeling that's missing? And the feeling, there's a bridge from feeling to beliefs. Am I understanding that?
Yeah.
That line?
Yeah. So typically, say if...
Can I use an example?
Yeah.
So, we have recently been given the opportunity to take masters events over into Jordan, into Amman, and it's something that I really, really feel like I want to do. Obviously, I want to have a successful event over there, but I was trying to think about, that's what I want. I want to take the event to Jordan, but then if I go deeper into that, what's the feeling? Why do I want to do that? Why do I want an event? And it's just definitely beyond having a successful event in that region. It's because I feel like our job is, what we do is extremely purposeful, but I think that doing something there in that region that is so close to Palestine and what's going on over there will really give me a sense of purpose that, as I said, I already feel like the work we do is purposeful. This will just kind of, I've been saying to Emma recently, I almost feel like I need to be an activist or go and do something quite extreme at the moment because of what's going on in the world. And I think this event there might give me that, or at least it's a step closer to that, perhaps. Is that relevant?
Yes. Because what you're saying there is you've delved into that discovery phase of the benefits, not just for you, but for the people around you and essentially for the world, right? And so that's what you've located. So that gives you that momentum to keep going, even when it might get difficult. And those gremlins do come up and need a bit of debunking, I call it. So typically, another thing that you've just reminded me of is typically someone I work with also had a sort of ooh, can I go for this quite big job? And it was a big network job. And the first thing was, oh, I'm probably not going to get it. And then essentially we worked together and got very clear on that purpose behind it and that, that why behind it. And Simon Snacks works very great in this because you kind of go, right, that will motivate me to make a bigger change, to bring, diversity into the world and to be able to change how people think through that role. So that's one of the things. I have a process, and It's called Pivot into Power. It's a bit like a goal alchemy, I suppose, where you look through lots of different Ds when you want something. And it's very heavy on discovery of self and debunking of, trauma and beliefs, but then tapping yourself into a higher frequency all the time, every day, because, life happens. And you will be like, ugh, motivation won't get you there. It wanes. We know that willpower can't take you there.
So what's the science behind tapping into a different state? So I can totally relate to the beliefs, the kind of unhelpful beliefs, that self-limiting beliefs that stop you from being able to be as impactful or do the things that you want to do. What is it about tapping then that shifts that belief?
Yeah, I'm a science nerd as well as all the energy work. I suppose with the tapping, the thing that really got me was the fact that the science is really strong. So there have been many double-blind, like peer-reviewed clinical trials now that show that you're working with the limbic system in the brain. You're allowing your amygdala, which we know is responsible for fight or flight mode, which we know is the thing that keeps us feeling stuck and in an action, and feeling unsafe, essentially. That when you tap has this incredible ability to essentially reduce anxiety, overwhelm. And one of the studies in 2019 showed that it essentially worked on the level of PTSD in a huge way. They did it with veterans. I work with quite a lot of veterans, people that have experienced like serious trauma, military, frontline, UN. That kind of trauma it worked on. And 8 out of 10 that were regularly tapping were, and I don't use this term willy-nilly, cured of their PTSD. So EFT tapping, I'm an advanced practitioner of that too, was really amazing in reducing the emotional burden of a specific trauma, and going through all the different aspects that we relate to the world. So that could be through music, through visuals that we, like you were saying, triggering back, people, places. So when something happens, it's like bang, lodged. And what tapping does, I think, is to unlodge that. So that study also showed that it reduced anxiety by 43%, which is incredible to me. Overwhelm was around 60%. It also reduced things like cravings that we have. And it helped us feel better. So I think it was about a third of people said they felt happier, which is really lovely. Because when we're happier in a better frequency, life begins again.
It just makes me go straight to, because it's such it's relatively simple, it's universally applicable. It makes me go straight to, especially if we look at what's happening with children and the level of anxiety and stress. Why isn't this a practice that we teach, like we teach cooking, or why is this not way more ingrained if there's that evidence base there? Maybe it's just very new still, but the way you've described it and the opportunity it presents for shifting the trajectory of humanity, which is very anxious, which is very doubtful, which is very fearful, which is driving lots of the unhelpful and unfavorable behaviors that we see. Why isn't this so much more ingrained in just what we do and how we do it?
Yes. And it's not woo-woo weird. It's not alternative. For me, this is mainstream. I've really, you've probably seen, I've tried to get this into mainstream, just like you say, like we use it with the kids, use it at work, use it before a meeting. Like this is something at our fingertips. It's free.
Well, I was thinking like a pre-op. If you're going for an operation, it should be like the
pre-op stuff with people.
Yeah.
Yep. It's really good. And post-op to deal with that as well. In like alongside anything health-wise. It's just...
So, I mean, the post-op stuff, especially because, I mean, when you have an operation, you store trauma. That's trauma then stored in your body. And if you do this immediately after an operation, you are literally, it's a somatic experiencing exercise, isn't it? That releases the trauma, the stuck energy in our bodies, and it could be anywhere in our body, and just do this is what the tapping does. It is able to release that. It's similar to the kind of idea of shaking it off. It's that, but in a more kind of routine way.
And Poppy, can you do it in if, let's say, you're still in the environment that is conducive? So let's take the veteran, for example. Is it something that can be practiced during active service as much as after the event to cope with the experience of that in the body?
100%. Because like you just said, Minta, as soon as something happens, tap. As soon, like SOS, like do it immediately. Don't think about what you have to say. Am I getting it right? Start tapping on your body, and you will notice that you've shifted an energy. And that I always try and say, don't leave it until you've got this trauma that you've regurgitated and repeated to yourself for 10 years. That's 10 years of your life wasted. Let's go. Like, do it as soon as it happens. It's a really, really important point. Yeah.
And is it as simple as as with the exercise that we did? Is there a pattern, a start point, an end point, or is it just the bilateral? I mean, we think of walking as bilateral stimulation, the left, right, as a way of regulating nervous system. Is it working on that same principle?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're looking at, I suppose. And it depends on the client or the patient, right? So if I was doing, say, EFT with somebody, I'd be looking at what is the sort of specific trauma, and I would go through, depending on where they're at, something where I wouldn't say too much, or we would just take them into something gently and work through it. We may need a few goes. It may happen in one session, maybe 3. If it was something, for example, just on the go and something's happening, or you just want to increase your mood, I would say do rapid tapping. That you can do slightly differently because it's self-administered. It's like just nervous system health. And then I would say, yeah, use that sequence. There's lots of energy techniques in there, but also visualization, mindset. So I would say, depending on who you are, I would say I'd veer towards EFT tapping for severe trauma. And I would do that with someone like me, a practitioner. If it's something where you want to work with beliefs, or you want to create a goal, or you want to, just look after your nervous system day to day, I would say rapid tapping. So those are that's what I would say.
So basically, if you have had some sort of trauma that hasn't worked with kind of a talk therapist, go and do some EFT, shift wherever it's stuck, and then for kind of maintenance, the rapid tapping then will continue to keep your nervous system healthy. Because the thing is, there are struggles throughout everyone's lives, it might not be called traumas, but there are difficulties and as you say, if we can tap those out immediately, then you're kind of going to be putting yourself in a better situation ongoing, aren't you? So.
Well, it's like where there's so many circumstances and situations that, elderly parents, and you're trying to balance children, or you're trying to kind of a big job. There's, just the global angst that we live in now. Just watching the news, having a tool to get you back regulated and in your own body and feeling safe, because there's so much that we're exposed to now that creates that dysregulation and that dissociation from, what's actually happening to you in that moment and where you are. I think equipping everybody with tools like this can only be
great segue into the final question as well.
Yes, it is. If we zoom right out, Poppy, and look at the kind of geopolitical climate, the climate crisis, wherever you look, really on a macro level, there's many reasons to be concerned. If we then come down to kind of communities and societies, again, there's so much that's dissolved that used to be build connection and community. Then come down to another level, to colleagues, that lots of people don't work physically together anymore, so they don't regulate each other's nervous systems, and we don't kind of interact. Just look at us here sat on a kind of video call. then look at our immediate, our family, our friends, our significant other, our children, our relationship with ourselves. There's lots of reasons and circumstances and situations that make us fractious, that make us nervous, anxious, doubtful, fearful. If there was a single lever for change, a button that you could push that would be the catalyst for the kind of change that we need to see for a positive trajectory for humanity, what would that be?
I believe that it's simpler than we think. And I actually believe that it starts with touch, which brings a level of safety, connection to oneself, but also there is something innate in us that knows deep down things are possible when we sort of work together. And I feel like often when we feel unsafe, and you're right, it's big right now, coming together begins with ourselves. And if you're raising kids or you're working with anyone, the place to go is to your heart, and tapping is a part of that, and touch is a part of that. So I would probably say begin with, a very simple connection to self, and then change your frequency, and then take that out to somebody else and show them that they can do it too.
Do you know, that really resonates to me, that thing around touch as well, because I do think that, again, if you look at societally, touch has become a bit of a taboo. But I'm very hands-on with my children, and I can not only feel it be something that they really respond positively to, but me too. Like I'm always cupping their face, or, at bedtime, just kind of placing a hand on their heart and just feeling it. And I hadn't consciously made that connection. But I think that, again, that's something we don't. I was waving my parents off yesterday. They came, and to hold my parents and have that physical closeness, it's just it is so regulating. It is so innate and so natural, but actually quite infrequent.
It's so important, and I think the pandemic really kind of highlighted that for a lot of people. Which we're really stopping from touching. We don't touch people as much anymore, and we certainly didn't over those years. But I think I mentioned to Poppy a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, that Bessel and the Trauma Research Foundation actually funded a research study about the importance of touch on our nervous systems and for trauma survivors and stuff. And I'll send you that link to that study, because it's by a neuroscientist called Ruth Lanius, who is an incredible neuroscientist. And it's just a really important study, and I think we need to be more aware of that. And I think, like, I'm very, very tactile with my son too. And I think I've mentioned to you, Emma, when I give him a hug, especially if it's skin on skin hug, I've got an aura ring on, and my an aura ring will tell you when you're stressed, when you're engaged, when you're relaxed, and when you're restored. And every time I have a skin on skin hug with Rory that's over like 2 minutes long, I can drop from being stressed immediately down into the restored state of my app. So it's definitely helpful for me to do that, for sure.
I just love how distinctive that answer was too. We've done a lot of podcasts and no one's gone there. So it's a really unique and important. It just resonated to me rationally and emotionally. I just felt it as well as understood it. So yeah, great. Thank you, Poppy. It's been a pleasure to have you on today. I'm really grateful for the time and the energy you shared with us and all of the insights. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.